Hello, welcome back to this week's episode of Closed by Mo. My name is Mohammed. I'm hopefully your favorite YouTube host on most things real estate. I'm also a real estate investor and a broker based out of New York City. In this week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can do as a homeowner to decide whether or not it makes sense for you to either refinance your house or even decide to sell it. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because if you haven't been living under a rock, you know what's been going on with interest rates, and even though there are signs that interest rates are cooling down, most likely if you've bought a house over the last several years, your interest rate that you have on your mortgage, if you do have a mortgage, is probably a lot lower than what it currently is, or even will be, even with the interest rate reductions. So without further ado, let's jump right into this week's video about whether or not you should refinance, sell your house, or even do anything in this current interest rate market. Let's go. Now, before we even begin into the process or in the video of whether or not it makes sense for you to refinance or sell your property in 2024, I want to just say something clearly. Your decision will depend entirely on what your long-term goals are. Now, myself as a broker as well as an investor, my main priority when I'm working with a client that's, we're having the very first conversation or first couple of conversations is to help you figure out what your actual goals are and whether or not it even makes sense for you to do anything, whether it's a refinance or even a sale, right? At the end of the day, your goals are what's going to be the one that you will have most clarity on or can have most clarity on, and then you'll be able to work your way backwards because things like interest rates, whether they're, increasing or decreasing, whatever it is, that's not something you can necessarily control. So a lot of my conversation and focus with clients is to help them figure out and focus on things that we can control, which is what your goals are and whether or not it makes sense for us to adjust our sales based off of factors that we can't control, ergo the interest rates. With that being said, you have to first and foremost understand the current market that you're in. The reason I say that is because even with interest rates where they are now, which is more than double where they were a few years ago, your local market might be different, right? Even in New York City and Long Island where I operate, the New York City market is going to be different than the Nassau and Suffolk markets, which make up Long Island, because these are very different factors and very different demographics of homeowners and home buyers that are looking to have a transaction in those particular areas. The reason I say that is because what I'm noticing myself as a broker is the market in the boroughs are definitely a lot softer, I would say, or a little bit slower moving than the markets in Long Island, especially in Long Island where there are, top tier school districts. So you have to understand that moving forward in terms of understanding what your local market is, because your local market will dictate whether or not it makes more sense to sell or refinance or even do anything. The reason I say that is because you have to consider what your refinancing would entail. Now, let's say, for example, you bought your home several years ago and you have a bunch of equity built into it. If you've gotten a mortgage several years ago, it's definitely going to be lower than where it is now. However, it might make sense for you to refinance considering a few different options. For example, maybe if you refinance, you'll be able to lock in a lower rate, which sounds kind of absurd, but if you gotten your initial mortgage with like an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage, aka that's what it's known as an ARM, then it might make sense for you to refinance into something that's of a more realistic market rate, but it's on a fixed 30-year term, right? So this way your mortgage payment doesn't sort of fluctuate and it's fixed over 30 years, so meaning you could be saving money in the long term. A couple of other things where it might make sense for you to refinance is if you have other very much high cost debt. So let's say, God forbid, you have a lot of credit card debt and you have a lot of equity in the house. Even with interest rates at 6%, 7%, 8%, it might still make sense for you to tap into that equity in your home through a refinance and then use it to pay down the high cost debt that you already have, which are credit cards, which might be 20, 30, 40% APRs, depending on how high the interest rate was when you were issued the card. Obviously, if you have other projects in and around the house, then it might make sense for you to refinance, pull money out of the house to further add value to the property itself. Now, in terms of deciding whether or not it makes sense for you to sell, this is where it comes down to really your personal preference and what your long-term goals are. For example, my clients that, let's say, might not have any kind of lifestyle changes. They don't have any, their family isn't getting any bigger, the family isn't getting smaller, they're at the same job, they maybe are making the same income, whatever it is. If there's no lifestyle changes in your life, it might not really make sense for you to sell at all, especially with the way rates are. It wouldn't really make sense, especially if you bought something several years ago at like a 2%, 3% rate, for you to sell your house now and then buy something at a more expensive rate with your payment being higher and maybe even being able to afford something that's smaller. Then it doesn't make sense, and that's what we're seeing is causing a inventory shortage in the current market, and that's why prices are remaining stable, if not higher. However, If you decide that, hey, you know what, we want to be able to have a long-term goal of maybe retiring into a foreign country or retiring out of state, out of county, whatever it is, you just know that you want to move away, then it might make sense for you to sell, because if you have a lot of equity built up, ergo your property has appreciated a lot, and you are able to then cash out and use that money towards something different in a different chapter of your life, then it might make a lot of sense, right? Otherwise, the factors to help you decide whether or not it makes sense for you to sell your house are things that include, like, obviously capitalizing on the home equity. Let's say, for example, if you say, hey, you know what, I've come across other investment opportunities, or I want to, let's say, sell my primary residence and buy something that's more of an investment property that will help me with later on in life, whatever it is, then it might make more sense, because you have to factor in the opportunity cost of not selling the property. And what I'm seeing right now are the people that are effectively selling their properties and are listing it on the market, even if they have a very low rate on their mortgage, are the ones that have a very specific trigger or a lifestyle change, or have a lot of clarity on the fact that, hey, we need the money from this sale to be able to do X, Y, and Z. They're not just selling it because they just want to make a bunch of money and move on, and maybe want to change up the house a little bit or change up their taste. No, there is something very tangible happening in their lives. Now, in terms of understanding market conditions when it comes time to selling your house, you have to look at what your local market is. The reason I say that is because you might hear all these different crazy headlines about how home prices are surging because inventory is so low, and buyer demand hasn't really recoiled as much. That might apply in a lot of markets, but it may not apply in your market. So in that particular case, you have to work with a broker, or maybe even sit down and do a little bit of homework yourself in terms of what the property or real estate sale trends have been in your area, maybe even in your zip code over the last 6 to 8 months, to help you figure out whether it makes sense for you to actually list and sell your house, because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you list your house and you've overpriced it or underpriced it, or maybe you've underestimated how soft the market is in your area, that you are not able to sell it quickly, and then you have to take it back off the market. That is going to hurt you a lot, especially if you go back to relist it down the line, because people will be able to see that kind of transaction history, and they'll be able to see whether or not you were able to successfully sell the house when you listed it at a different price later on, and they might be able to use that information to affect their negotiations whenever you do decide to relist it and you're a lot more serious about selling. So you have to keep that in mind. And again, a couple of overarching rules you have to understand as a homeowner that is thinking about selling their house or refinancing. Number one, what are your financial goals, right? Is this something that you absolutely need to do, or is this something that will make sense with what your actual long-term goals are? I keep stressing this to all my clients. Figure out what your goals are. I will help you figure out what your goals are, and then let's work our way backwards, because we might have that conversation about figuring out what your goals are and then decide, hey, it really doesn't make any sense for you to refinance or even sell your house. You should just stay put for at least another year, or until the rates start calming down a little bit. That might very well be the outcome of the conversation. Of course, the other things you have to do is decide whether or not the market is suitable for where you're at right now. Yes, in most markets that I operate in, even with the rising interest rates and where the interest rates are right now, buyer demand is still very strong, because there's just not as much inventory available. Why? Because people aren't selling. It doesn't make sense for people to sell their house if they got a 2.5% mortgage rate or a 3% mortgage rate, and then buy something for almost 7% mortgage rate. Their payment's going to be more than double. Another thing, of course, is to always keep in mind interest rate projections. These are all projections. No one can tell you 100% what the interest rates, how the interest rates are going to be adjusted over the next several months, unless you're Jerome Powell, of course, at the Federal Reserve. However, if you're not Jerome Powell, then you might not have the best idea of what interest rates are, going to do over the next several months. So it's better for you just to take it at face value and then reassess whether or not your goals can align with where the current market conditions are. And don't make a decision with the off chance or factoring in that, hey, interest rates are definitely going to go down in the near future, because you're going to be setting yourself up for failure. Because what happens if interest rates stay the same, or even they go up again? You don't know. That might happen, right? Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you have any more questions or concerns, if you're thinking about selling your house in New York City or Long Island and you're just not sure, let's sit down, let's have a conversation about it. All my contact information is below, or leave me a comment and I'll definitely reach out to you. Thank you guys. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.